What's up? It's your boys Jordan and Abraham. As you guys know, he's a professional runner, so he's your fast friend. I'm an MD PhD student, so I'm your smart friend. But the most important thing is we are your friends who read One Piece.
Yes, yes, yes. And he's saying it with confidence now. He's saying it with confidence now.
Sometimes you gotta say stuff. I've learned when giving presentations, you gotta say stuff with confidence, even if you don't really believe it yourself. As long as everybody else believes it, you're probably fine. But I gotta tell you, we didn't get to read One Piece this week because there was no chapter this
Oh no.
week. But that gives us an opportunity to talk about something that I think is very going to be very relevant to the story going forward, and that is this idea of how does hockey as a what hockey how does hockey as a power system kind of stand up when compared maybe to power system with it in other series. And what really got me thinking about this was Luffy's most recent fight against Kizaru, where I was talking to some friends about it, and we just had a complete difference of opinion in terms of how strong Luffy versus Kizaru were in that fight. And a lot of it came down to the ambiguity of advanced conquer hockey use during the fight, which made me think about maybe what are some of the shortcomings and what are some of the good things about hockey. Do you have any opinions about stuff like that, Jordan?
Yeah, man. Well, to me, it's one of the things that's beautiful about hockey as a power system is the ambiguity that it has in the system. It's the fact is we don't have a really clear understanding of just like, oh, hockey is more important than devil fruits, or devil fruits are more important than hockey. It's not as simple as Super Saiyan 1 is weaker than base state. Super Saiyan 2 is stronger than Super Saiyan 1. So, et cetera, things like that. And so I think it gives us a lot of ambiguity to work with for the characters. And so I think that one of the questions that we're really, like you're saying, one of the things we're really wrestling with right now in the series is how strong are the admirals? Right? We know Akainu got half his Whitebeard, half his face was taken off, and he could still wreck him. But we're also sort of in a point where if the admirals are no longer a threat, that feels like it would be super damaging to the story. Right, like if Akainu isn't a threat, then we're just kind of like out of luck in terms of having the military as a villain for the rest of the series. And so for me, it's sort of really interesting thinking about what the awakening of Luffy's fruit mean, what it means for what these characters have, advanced conquerors, hockey, things like that. Like, and I think that it's the ambiguity of it that allows for a lot of it to continue to feel
So
natural.
I think maybe we mean different things when we talked about ambiguity for a sec, because I actually find the ambiguity of hockey use itself to be kind of problematic in the series. So I agree in series like Dragon Ball Z, where you have like, power scouters, and it's like, if someone has a power, like if the scouter reads 10,000 and someone else reads 11,000, like there's no nuance to the fight, right? The stronger fighter is just going to win whenever you scale stuff like that, which is how I think you were kind of using ambiguity in that conversation, right? You don't want going into a fight to be able to definitively say this person has to be more powerful. That's almost like the Doruki system back in like Water 7, right? Where we were like, we
Right.
know Lucci's objectively stronger than Kaku and so on. I agree you don't really want that in a power system because it doesn't really make for very creative fights. But the issue that I have with ambiguity in hockey use itself is that we don't really know from from the fights themselves when hockey is even being used and what kind of hockey is being used. I remember when Kobe did his punch against Pizarro back on Beehive Island, right? Some people saw like the
Against
lightning
Kizaru? Kizaru
is
was on Beehive Island?
no Pizarro, Avalo Pizarro, the island fruit guy from
Oh yeah,
Blackbeard's
okay,
Cove.
man. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I got you.
yeah. Maybe I mispronounced his name, but when Kobe does his big punch to conclude that mini arc, I mean some people that I were talking to thought that maybe he was using advanced conquerors because we saw like some black light, something that looked like black lightning.
Right.
I thought it was pretty clear that this was just maybe advanced armament because we didn't see the no contact that is characteristic of advanced conquerors. But time and time again, I feel like whether it's Luffy not consistently using future side Haki, whether it's Luffy not consistently using advanced conquerors Haki. Against Kizaru, I had some people tell me that he did use advanced conquerors. He was going all out throughout the fight. Whereas to me, it seemed like he only used advanced conquerors for that last blow before Saturn came, right? And when you have a power system that is when your readers can't come to a consensus upon like what abilities are even being used and when, that's a little problematic. You know what I mean?
But basically, the only thing where that comes into account is whether or not something is advanced conqueror's haki, right? And if we understand these things as a manifestation of willpower, it's just sort of like if instead of thinking about it as, oh, now this thing has to reach into the tier of advanced conqueror's haki, but instead it's like, hey, this is some armament haki, and this is kind of it's stronger armament haki, or this is Rio, and this is kind of stronger Rio. I think it's this sort of categorization that we're placing on it, where we're trying to really scale where you run into trouble is trying to decide that one of these things is just undoubtedly stronger than the other thing, and say, oh, well, this person wasn't going all out because he wasn't using advanced conquest. Like maybe he was going all out, but it wasn't the time to use it. And I think that like no, we don't have this absolutely perfect understanding of it, but I think the idea that no one who doesn't have advanced conquerors haki could beat someone who does have advanced conquerors haki has to be a flawed concept.
Yeah, but I don't think it's just an issue with advanced conquerors, right? Like I said, with Future Sight, we've seen characters like specifically Katakuri, right? Who's constantly using every
Right,
single moment of every single day. He is surveying everything Future Sight.
right.
And with Luffy, we have moments where he decides to use Future Sight in his battles. We've seen Kaido has have moments where he's like, did you think you're the only person who could look into the future? Um, but then there are other moments where, for whatever reason, Luffy is not using Future Sight, right? And maybe the argument is just as simple as he's not nearly as skilled as Katakuri in observation Haki yet. But I guess my point is that the inconsistency is not just limited to advanced conquerors Haki in my opinion.
So where else do you see this? What you would call inconsistency?
I think the two biggest ones are advanced conquerors and future sight. Those are the two
But
biggest
but with
complaints that.
with future sight to me, it feels like Luffy is using that basically in every fight, right? As long as he's focused on something, it's just not going to show us that every time because that would be totally onerous. Right, like to have Luffy to show to actually necessarily show, oh, in every single fight he's using future sight. It's like if every single time someone attacks, they're just going to be like, oh, I saw that attack, but oh, actually Kaido's too fast because he can also see into the future, and there's this whole like future sight battle. It's like, man, I don't want to think too much about that. That's going to end up being this way too complicated
I
game.
guess I agree with that, but the thing is, Oda will go out of his way to point out when Luffy is using future sight, right? Like he'll specifically, I
What's
think,
like those two
against.
times, right? Like when else do they do it? It's
I
like in
think
specific moments where something about it matters. So for example, he's
yeah.
learning with Katakuri. Obviously, it matters in that instance. When he's fighting Kaido and we're demonstrating that power up is not strong enough to just beat Kaido, that's when we show it. But if you assume that it's not like when we saw Luffy use it against Kaido, he just stopped using it the rest of the time. It's just they didn't need to show it because they've demonstrated that
So
Luffy is using it against
in
Kaido.
in the Udon prison arc, I remember he specifically stops the guard from doing some poison attack, and he's like, "Oh, I just saw a horrible future." I think against the Tobi Roppo, I can't remember her name, the girl that would headbutt
Ulti?
everyone. Ulti, yeah. I think when Luffy fought her, I could be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure he also made a reference where he was like talking about seeing the future. So there are times in random fights where Oda will point out that Luffy is looking into the future. And I think it's fine maybe to do that with new characters that we don't know can see them. Like when Kaido announces, did you think you were the only person who could look into the future? It's
Yeah.
important because now we know definitively Kaido has future sight. Same thing with Shanks. But like
But like the
you
moment you're
say,
talking about, right,
yeah,
when he pulls when he like either it's ulti or other or it's him avoiding the poison or whatever from whatever was happening in the Udon mines,
yeah.
what it has is demonstrating why Luffy was able to do this thing and why he chose to make an action that he made. Through a lot of the fighting, it just being on generally is not going to necessitate, it's not going to be such a, oh, I like made this completely seemingly weird decision because of this danger that I had to stop.
That's a fair interpretation. I just think that when you do have a bunch of like instances where you're specifically pointing out that he's using this ability, it makes it hard for me to then assume that when you're not pointing it out during his fights that he's also using that. You know what I mean? And it's
I
not
don't know what you
look,
mean, man.
it's not
I easily assume that.
no. To me, it's not like a crippling weakness of Haki as a power system, but I do think it leads to you can have two people read the exact same fight and interpret it two completely different ways because they have different underlying assumptions about what's going on. For example,
Say
like
more
again,
about that. Say
I
more.
read
Say more about that.
like perfect example. I read Kizaru versus Luffy, and
Right.
to me, my our buddy Samir, he was telling me, yeah, Luffy is basically as strong as Kizaru because the fight ended in a draw. And my point was like, well, Luffy didn't use advanced conquerors throughout the fight. So if he's not using one of his most powerful ability, it would be like if you fought an
Oh
Uchiha
man.
like Sa
Okay,
wait,
Mr.
let me
Morris.
finish.
Okay,
You
Mr.
fought
Morris. Okay, Mr. Morris.
you
I watched that whole video.
no. But if you fought like if you fought Sasuke and he didn't use his Sharingan and Sasuke lost, right? I feel like the response wouldn't be that X person is as strong as Sasuke because he clearly wasn't using all of his ability. Or it's like if you fought Goku and Goku never went Super Saiyan. Again, I think it's reasonable to be like, how can we scale them the same way when they haven't used all of their abilities? But then Samir's point was, I don't know if he hasn't been. Maybe he has been using advanced conquerors this whole time, and we just weren't really aware of it during the fight. And that's where I think some of these issues that I'm bringing come up.
But I think that the just to use the analogy you just used, it would be more like it's sort of like we don't know that Kizaru has exhausted his everything either. He could have in some ways just been surprised by the amount of power that Luffy had, or just not knowing how to fight some dude who's like running around, jumping and freaking whatever all the mess gear fit is, turn into a giant and all those kinds of things, right? Like when Luffy came back, it wasn't like they were fighting head to head. It's that Kizaru was sitting here threatening Vegapunk, and Luffy turned into a giant and ran his arm into the building and grabbed him just like completely by surprise, right? So it's
Mhm.
not it's more along the lines of like, yeah, we know that maybe Sasuke didn't use his Sharingan, or maybe he didn't. I don't even know all the whatever the strongest Mangekyo, whatever the freaking
Whatever. Yeah.
Mangenkyo, it's more. But it's also like if Naruto didn't use his Rasengan, or if he didn't like fully unleash his Nine Tails chakra, and you say they're in a fight, you say we still need to see more, but we have reason to believe that they're at the very least in the same class of people. And I think that that's what this sort of power system has done really well, is created a world in which people can beat other people without just like by being stronger in a different way. It's like you don't have the strongest conqueror, like freaking Chinjiao had conqueror's hockey. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and he might have even had advanced conqueror's hockey because oh no. He didn't guard. No, for a second I thought he got his head busted in. I thought he got his head busted in, but it wasn't touching. I just remember I was like, no, I tried to make that argument before. His head was definitely touching Garp's hand, but we know he had conqueror's hockey, and that doesn't make him necessarily a stronger character than someone who may not have Conqueror's Haki, like Kizaru doesn't seem like he has Conqueror's Haki, but I would be willing to bet that you're going to take Kizaru over Chinjiao in a fight, you know, 9 times out of 10. It,
Yeah.
it, it, it go ahead.
No, no, I agree. I think that's why I said how we're using ambiguity is a little bit different. I'm talking about ambiguity in terms of like actual when characters are using hockey, and you're talking about ambiguity in terms of is person X stronger than person Y
Right.
based off of these different skill sets. It's almost like in Hunter x Hunter, right, where you have Nen, right, and depending on how you're implementing your Nen, someone who's it's not crystal clear who's stronger than the other. And I actually do love that part about it. The other thing that I love about hockey as a power system is that it there are certain devil fruits in the series that when we were introduced to them felt like instant wins
Right.
that are now just we now that we realize are a little bit nerfed by the presence of hockey. I think Boa's fruit to me seemed like one of the most
Right.
broken fruits in the world. This is
Right.
like
Right.
literally instant win over
Hey,
anyone
listen,
who is
hold on
throwing
now.
hockey.
Hold on now. If Big Mom had that fruit now, listen now, you know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah,
saying if Big Mom had that fruit, I don't know if it would have the same exact kind of powers as Boa
sure.
Hancock. All right,
But
let's
you know what I mean though,
I
right?
just want to be clear that it's a combination
Yeah,
of certain things that makes that
yeah,
fruit OP in Boa Hancock's hands.
yes,
But it's
yes,
not it's
yes,
not just that devil fruit that's OP.
yes. But you get so
And I might be
now we
afflicted by that too if I lived in the One Piece world. I'm not gonna lie,
for
because I have
sure,
some good
for sure.
willpower, but it's certain
You
things.
gonna are you gonna let Boa step on your face?
I would let Boa do a lot of things to my face. And I'm not talking about stepping. I'm talking about something
Uh-huh.
else.
It's
She's
okay.
not
It's
gonna
okay.
step
Yeah, I
or
got you. I
stand
got
on
you. I
my
got
face, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh man. No, but I think Lost Fruit to me was like that. Boa's Fruit was like that, where it was
Right,
like, yeah, if you're fighting Law and he just switches your personality with some weakling, then all of a sudden he can beat you, right? Well, no, because if your Haki is stronger than Law's Haki, then he can't use his Devil Fruit on you. We
right.
haven't seen that with Boas, but I imagine her whole thing about turning you into stone, if your Haki is strong enough, that you'd be able to fight something like that off too, right? So these kind of overpowered devil fruits not being these instant win conditions is something that I love Haki having. I think it serves a very integral role for Haki in this series.
And I think the thing that works so well for it in this series in particular is that it is, in a lot of ways, an extension of willpower, which seems to be the thing that Oda wants to communicate is the meaning of true strength. I guess both willpower and the ability to draw people to you. And so, in a lot of ways, I think, observation Haki, even when you talk about someone like Kobe being able to hear all the voices and be able to feel people suffering, uh, that's like a real form of strength. And then like what Mihawk refers to, I think at least that kind of Haki is related to that power that Mihawk talks to as the most fearsome in the oceans of being able to draw people and have people want to be on your side. And then obviously just like your fighting willpower, yes, you have armament Haki, but the strongest version of that is also about, having one being a champion, being a conqueror, being someone who wants to dominate, and having the extension of that be the kind of thing that determines strength and is able to sort of like flexibly, it's like it's able to counteract devil fruit powers, but only if your will is super strong. And then also the devil fruit powers are able to get super strong. But then also, if you don't have enough willpower, then you can't conquer like an awakened zone devil fruit. And so for that to really be the important piece of how things work, it allows there to be an amount of lack of clarity, but it really comes down to the person who's the toughest with the strongest will is the one who will and deserves to win. I think that's a beautiful thing for the series.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this is another thing Samir disagrees with me about, but I also love the fact that we got allusions to this back in Baratier with Zeph talking to Sanji about like the strongest spear when Luffy's fighting Don Krieg. Like Oda
Right.
had this idea, in my opinion, Oda had this idea about willpower manifesting as strength back in the East Blue, and the fact that he was able to form an actual power system out of it to me was pretty cool.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, Samir, get out, stop hating. Oda had this planned out. Oda had this planned out all the way back to East Blue. Samir, stop hating. This is a beautiful. I completely agree. No, I completely with you. I
Yeah,
think it's great to see the references from all the way back then.
yeah. So, we already gave predictions for 1107 last week, but I feel like we have another week. We might as well give another prediction. So, do you have any thoughts about what might be happening this next chapter, these next couple chapters?
Man, I got a good one, I think. We talked a lot about power systems, feats, things like that. I think we're gonna get Dory and Bragi versus Kizaru. And I think I'm gonna predict that it's gonna be pretty even. And sidebar, that's another thing we didn't even talk about is Dory and Bragi are just like huge. We don't have any idea like how strong, like how we mentioned, we don't really have an idea how strong like giants or whatever. We've seen all these different things that have different abilities to impact how strong someone is. It's like, hey, actually just being freaking huge, we don't even know if you can use Haki, but like that matters for how strong you are. I know in our last chapter, we were talking about how there's no similar feats for defeating Sea Kings. There's like no one that we've seen actually defeat a Sea King. But let me tell you, man, I was reading it was probably volume 34 the other day, last night in my room before I went to bed. Maybe I even read it this morning. I don't know. And there is actually one other feat we have of someone easily defeating a Sea King, and it's when
Nolan.
a Sea King, what?
No, Nolan does. Is that
Two
who you're
other
gonna say?
feats.
Oh, my bad, my bad. I thought that's who you were gonna say.
What does Nolan defeat a Sea King? Hold on.
Right before they get to Jaya, you don't remember there's like a Sea King that's about to attack their ship, and then he like dives into the ocean and kills it.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Wait, my black cricket, you mean? Nolan is
No, no,
good, man.
yeah, this is during the flashback. Sorry, like during the
Oh, in the
flashback
flashback.
before
Oh,
he meets.
dang, man,
Yeah.
for a second, I was like, what? I was like, that's gonna ruin my whole argument if like Mont Blanc cricket was that strong.
Oh no, 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 no! I mean Nolan during the flashback before he gets to meet Kalgara and stuff. Yeah.
Right, right, right. No, so I want to go back and read that too. But yeah, exactly. So that's another feat. That's another dude who we know was like who we would assume is like pretty freaking strong, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but Aokiji also is basically attacked by a Sea King right at the end of Long Ring Longland before he gives Tanta a path to, move along the rest of the islands. I think that's the kind of feat that we look at as implying someone's really strong when it's characters like Noland, Aokiji, and just the giants who do it. And so I think I'm gonna guess that we're gonna end up with them as the people who fight Kizaru, while Luffy, maybe even some Akuma's memories, take on Saturn, and it's going to be a pretty good fight. It's going to be even. It's not going to be a blowout.
Yeah, I think size matters for I don't want to say for fodder, but it matters up until you scale to a certain level. And then at a certain point, when you're talking about the admirals, the Yonko and stuff, doesn't matter. I think how big and muscular you are. Like what matters is how strong your Haki is, how strong your devil fruits are. I personally have Dory and Brogy closer to like a vice admiral level. Maybe they're on like excluding Garp, obviously, but I would put them probably around the top of like a vice admiral
Hey,
rather
it's two
than.
on one though. It's 2-on-1.
I mean, you find me two vice admirals that are boxing with Kizaru. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Oda will scale them up in the same way that he did with Crocodile pre-time skip, but I don't expect them to be able to fight Kizaru. But who knows? Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. My prediction for the next chapter is that we are going to we're going to be that Katarina Devon is going to make herself um her presence like aware everyone aware to her presence, and that someone that is currently with like the straw hats and the vegapunk bodies and whatnot right now is kind of secretly kind of relate Devon as an imposter, and that next chapter we're gonna get a whole wrinkle thrown into Egghead by the Blackbeard pirates being there.
Damon, you think we're gonna get the Giants in one chapter and then the Blackbeard Pirates in the next chapter?
Yeah, because it feels like the arc is coming to a close, right? To me, I don't think we have a lot of time left. We specifically got a panel with Blackbeard's ship approaching Egghead.
We did
So
get that.
I don't know why Oda would include that if he just wasn't going to have them in the story, right? So he has
Bro,
to
bro,
introduce
wait,
them at some point.
wait, I just had an idea. What if Blackbeard steals Saturn's devil fruit? And that's the Egghead Island incident, bro. What if that's it? Oh, come on, man. Don't laugh like that, man.
No, I don't see it. I don't see it.
Don't be
I don't see it.
disrespectful like that, man. Come on. I thought that was a good idea.
It's possible. I don't think it's happening. I also don't like the idea of devil fruits being reused like that, you know? Like it's the same reason why I didn't love the idea of Blackbeard showing up to Wano and stealing Kaido's stuff.
That's fair, but yeah, I don't know, man. I got inspired when you're talking about the Blackbeard pirates showing up and thinking about the Egghead Island incident, and I'm like, you know what, like, because it's an interesting question of how they're, because we know they're there. It can't be nothing.
Yeah,
How are
yeah.
they going to mix in? How are they going to mix in with now all the other factions? We got the Giants, we got the Vegapunk, we got the Straw Hats. I don't know, man, but it's gonna be exciting. I can't wait.
Yeah, I agree.
So
All
we got
right.
a special S class versus F class special version today. You know, I know we said in our last episode we're going to talk about the sleeping giant that in 1106. Here we go. I'm going to go over pull up 1106 on here. It's on the second to last, maybe it's the fourth to last page because some of these are two-page spreads. We start to see the giant begin to creak right after Vegapunk's death, and as soon as we start seeing the Nika noises coming and you see Nika flying around, we're starting to see the sleeping giant move once again. And that's something that we knew we wanted to get into, but we said we're gonna save this for a break week. We gotta talk about Vegapunk's death. So we're gonna get into it now. But I think it's tough on this one to just have our own thoughts and ideas because it's such a big lore question. So we decided to give you a sleeping robot, sleeping giant themed S class versus F class with two theories that we're going to go a little more in depth on.
I'm excited.
So the first one comes from Arthur Library of O'Hara.
Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur Library of O'Hara. As we know, one of the hypotheses for the power of the Buccaneers is that they're able to sort of pass on their will or some kind of manifestation of like a super strong will that they have. The sleeping giant is had his will was someone who one of the original Buccaneers 800 years ago passed his will onto into this augmented body. And you could even suggest that this person who passed on their will to the sleeping giant was Joy Boy, who we know, might have been a giant or was kind of huge with the giant hat.
That's
There's an
it.
addendum to this theory, but I'm gonna get your initial reaction.
Yeah. Um, I don't love the idea of inherited will being a tangible thing. Like, so does that mean that because this person passed his will, like maybe Joy Boy passed his will onto this giant, that when the giant awakens, it would essentially be Joy Boy, like reincarnated or something? Like, maybe not reincarnated, because I guess that's kind of supposed to be Luffy. But
Right. What you
to
sound thrilled
me,
about.
no. I'm all for that with Luffy, right? Because it's the idea of Luffy being this generation's Joy Boy is not that, you know, he's some direct descendant or that he has inherited his spirit per se. It's more that the ideals of Joy Boy himself are those that are held by Luffy, and they're the ones that the Straw Hats are pushing forward into the world, right? Which is how I think Oda has consistently written stuff about inherited will. Uh, so having a scenario where inherited will becomes some tangible thing to me would kind of cheapen that. I don't know.
I'll say, man, because I really disagree with you on that. In part, honestly, this has been a really big theme of today's conversation. Is like I think in a lot of ways that's one of the things that's really cool about hockey, right? Is the idea that yes, you have actual physical manifestations of willpower. You having willpower makes your punch stronger, not like figuratively in the sense like you punch someone stronger, but you're able to actually like push willpower out of you and like punch someone from inside their stomach. I think there was also information in one of the recent like One Piece like guidebooks, logbooks, or whatever that talks about how inherited will is passed down through like whatever like the freaking DNA element, whatever the thing is. And so like that's one of the things where it's like the will of the devil fruit for someone, right? Like what happened to the jailer beasts in Eni's Impel Down. I almost said Eni's Lobby. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Impel Down, right? The jailer beasts.
Jailer Beast is impelled down.
It's like what happened to them is they were people who the zone fruit actually the fruits that they had too much willpower, and so they weren't actually able to handle it. So when your devil fruit is awakened, you sort of lose track of yourself and lose your mind, and then you end up acting like a giant cow or whatever. And that's like really, I think there's a way to imagine that that's what's happening with Luffy too when he starts sort of like getting tired and sort of just like shriveling up. It's like he's potentially not always able to handle the amount of power that Nika has. Although once it's awakened, although he's obviously strong, but to me, I think that's one of the things that we see Kuma. And Kuma is someone who, despite having his personality completely erased from his body, his willpower is this thing that's sort of like passed on, like it still exists within his body that is able to move to Bonnie and do whatever he wants and needs to
Right.
do.
But it's more inspirational to me if that is not an actual, like, if Luffy is Joy Boy because he received the spirit of Joy Boy. And so he was like almost like he was destined to become this because he got the will or spirit of Joy Boy, maybe through his devil fruit or whatever. That is less inspirational to me than this idea of, look, you have Luffy who was inspired by Shanks, who was inspired by Roger, who was, and you can go back generation after generation to be like, this is how I I should be living my life. This is how these are the ideals that I believe in. Yeah, I guess I like that idea a lot more than just being like, this is something I was always kind of destined to do because I
Ate
ate
the
this
gum.
simple fruit and I got the will of a sun god. So I'm not in love with this theory. I'm gonna we got a sleeping giant. I gotta tell you, I'm sleeping on this theory, and I'm gonna have to give it an F class. F
Man,
tier.
you just hating on it, passing on a will, man. I'm just gonna say because that's it's like you're hating on that, and that seems very obviously like what has happened with Luffy. It's like he was destined to be Joy Boy after he ate this fruit, man. And people might not like it, but that seems to be the case.
I don't think that was the case. I think that Shanks saw something in Luffy. And okay, here's the thing: we don't know how much Shanks knew about the
But
Gomu
Shanks
Gomu
didn't
no
mean to
Mi.
give him the fruit, man.
No, I know that. I know. I'm saying we don't know how much Shanks knew about the Gomu Gomu no Mi, but like long before any of this happened, Shanks essentially he gambled the future of the world on this random 5-year-old that he found on this island because he's like, this kid, he reminded me of Roger and he did this and he did that. And I mean, to me, that all of that preceded Luffy eating the his devil fruit. But
That is true. But it also kind of seems like the Joy Boy and Nika. I'm not saying Shanks didn't believe him. It just kind of seems like he was definitely in his foot. Especially too with the giant robot, we don't know what makes it move. Why did it decide suddenly that it wants to start moving and attacking Marijoa 200 years ago? Why can someone like Vegapunk, who's a super genius, not be able to figure out how to actually make it move? To me, the idea that it's getting some kind of that it's moving on some kind of willpower towards where the original person whose willpower it has might have had enemies, such as at Marijoa. I think that's kind of cool. But let me just add an addendum to this theory and see if this, this is also what Arthur said. So it's not just me making things up. I'm gonna see what you think of this, you know what I'm saying? So, he also said that what if what if the robot is drawn towards the red line, right? Because that's where the enemies are atop the red line. And potentially because we know because the One Piece is under Marijoa, right? Which would work out with the whole we're blowing up all the four seas, right? Like at the bottom of the
Huh?
red line, right? It's like you gotta blow up the four
Okay,
seas, you gotta make the one ocean to get the bottom of
got you.
Marijoa. But there's gotta be a path to somehow get to that undersea where you get to under the Marijoa. Now maybe that's Enies lobby.
Hey,
Maybe that's what the
I
whole
feel
Eddie's lobby is for.
I
Maybe the
feel like
whole
you skipped a bit. You lost me. Because you jumped a couple steps that I'm okay. The One Piece is under the red line,
right.
and how does that? And we have to be able to get under the red line to get the One Piece. How does that tie into Ennis Lobby?
Well, 'cause that's a giant hole that can help us get to the bottom of the ocean to get under the red line.
What?
Listen, man, you go to the you go to the bottom of this giant hole. That's gonna help you get down to the bottom of where you gotta go.
And so is it like the giant robot is the one who cut out this giant hole around Ennis Lobby or something like that? Like,
Listen, man, if the giant robot was trying to get down to the bottom of the ocean or under the red line,
I'm
and the
so
point is the One Piece at the bottom of Ennie's lobby.
I'm so confused. F F class. First of all, we already know you can get under the water under by coating your shit. We've seen why are we jumping through hoops to do something that we've already seen happen in the
No,
story?
because the robot couldn't get there that way, and that's listen, man. I heard someone on the internet say something about using any lobby to get to the One Piece at the bottom of the ocean, and I had to say something about it. Okay.
That's crazy.
I just had to come up with that. Um, the next theory I have about the giant robot is by Joy Girl, a new YouTuber who I'd never heard of before. So the TLDR version of it is that the giant robot's attack on Marijoa is connected to the dwarves and fishmen and skypians. I didn't really understand how this happened with skypians, sort of like being protected from the kind of like discrimination and persecution that they had before. And it was a weapon that was created by the fishmen from, eight, 900, whatever years ago. Uh, the reason it moved 200 years ago is because of like the height of violence against fishmen at that point, and they said we got to move to go attack Marijoa. And there's sort of in that way a kind of like a parallel between the Iron Giant and Fisher Tiger, your favorite, who like were felt like, yeah, we got to go climb the red line to go attack these people. Um, then 200 years ago, we know that's when the fishmen joined the world government. The flying fish settled in a place that like was in between Greenbit and Dressrosa, which added protection for them. And so the reason, basically, all the world elites were super scared of this giant coming up and attacking them because of when it was activated 200 years ago. And maybe it's powered, we're not sure exactly how, by the Eternal Flame and the Sun Tree Eve or something like that. But the people in Marijoa said, now we're going to give fishmen rights. Now we're going to give other people rights so they don't come up with these technologies to come attack us.
So I'm I feel like the timeline of this theory is not in line with the timeline of events in the story, right? Because and maybe I'm misremembering stuff, but Fishman Island became like they got a seat at the Reverie and were acknowledged by the world government by Otahime, right? Like when she went up there with Mosgard, right? I don't think the world government acknowledged them before that, right?
But according to this theory, the timing of that is similar to the timing of the giant moving 200 years ago or whatever.
But we
They didn't
we
attend
know
the
that's not
reverie.
true, right? Yeah, right. Because Otahime didn't live 200 years ago. That was like maybe like 30 or 40 years
Man, do I need to start watching these YouTube videos more closely or something, man?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Because all this stuff is
I,
like Fisher talk. like Shirahoshi is only like 16 years old, right? Like, so this didn't happen 200 years ago. So I feel like I would love this if the timeline matched up, but the timeline just doesn't really seem to make sense.
Hold on, man. Let's pretend the timeline makes sense, and then I'm gonna go like maybe I'll come back next week. I find the answer. You know, what's the name of their kingdom? Like you something. You know what I mean?
You what kind of kingdom is this?
Man, whatever the fishman's kingdom is called.
Oh, Ryugyuku or
Man, what kind of
Ryugyu.
name is that? Man, see now it's telling me this is showing me things in like present day Japan on Wikipedia. So let's just pretend that the timeline works out because I'm gonna assume that I just explained something wrong and the timeline actually does work out because how could this person on the internet I want her trust and joy girl. You know what I'm saying? So can give me a rating? What do you think of it if the timing does work out? You know what I'm saying?
If the timing works out, then I guess if the time if the time I worked out, I guess I could give it an S class. But it just it's very clear that we know that from the Vegapunk that the robot moved 200 years ago, and we know Ultra Hime and Fish Tiger weren't alive 200 years ago. Um, so it feels weird to give it an S class because you're basically like it feels like the whole theory is built on like all of this stuff happened 200 years ago, and that's what got the robot to move, but it didn't happen 200 years. So I'll give it an S class just so that you can have a W instead.
Well, I do like the idea of the robot being something that is at the very least like politically that there's like a real political reason for the robot moving when it did and that the effect of it actually had some kind of effects on the rest of the effects on the rest of the world, right? Like I know one of the things that Uteron talks about a lot when he's done theories about the giant robot is a lot of us talking about like yeah what was it allied with the ancient kingdom and is that why it had a battle like 900 years ago and who knows what was moving 200 years ago, maybe it has something to do with the older joy boy 200 years ago. I don't really know, but I'm sort of the idea that it's allied with these sorts of factions and then has political implications I think is really it's at the very least an interesting it's an interesting reason for it to be moving and for it to exist.
Sure. No, I agree with that.
Well,
Um,
you have any ideas on the giant robot man? Because apparently all mine suck and have bad. I thought Archer's was
I
actually a
don't
pretty
know.
interesting theory, but go on.
Yeah. No, I don't have any fleshed out thoughts on the giant robot. I think it's pretty clear that the ancient kingdom was fairly technologically advanced, or maybe I shouldn't say it's clear, but the robot to me suggests that the ancient kingdom was technologically advanced, and that this might just be some kind of remnant of, I don't know if it's like their fighting force or something along those lines, right? That managed to not be eliminated by the world government. I still don't know what caused it to move 200 years ago. It seems like in the present day, the resurrection of Joy Boy, of Nika, is what's causing it to move. At least that's what the story seems to imply. Um, but again, that's also I also don't know how Nika just being there is a power source, unless it's like, the drums of liberation. You know how like who's that Revolutionary Army member? The one that has like the flag fruit or whatever that like
Hello,
hypes people
Betty.
up. Mellow Betty. Right. So maybe it's a matter of something like, the drums of liberation. They boost your spirits in that sense, in the same way that her devil fruit kind of does, and that's what causes the robot to move. I don't.
I think those kinds of things make a lot of sense because the thing we don't have a really good explanation for is why someone like Vegapunk, who has all kinds of technological expertise, right? Like this dude is a major scientist. You know what I'm saying? it's he at the very least very clearly seems to have a level of understanding of what science looks like in the One Piece world beyond the what the normal average person in One Piece or in the normal pirate, normal even a freaking normal anyone but Jay Garcia Saturn understands. And so the idea that he doesn't really understand or know how to make it work really sort of, I mean, to be honest, that's why the Archer theory resonates for me, is because the idea of it having some kind of will or there needing to be some kind of connection with something, whether it's Nika, whether it's Joy Boy, or whether it's just like someone has to be trying to do something that makes that will come to life, is interesting as like an explanation for me.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm on board with that for sure. But I
Cool,
think
man.
it's time. I think it's time we move on. And we, we've talked about cheating a lot on this pod.
Yes,
We
sir.
talked about it last week. To the point where I feel like people might start to be making assumptions about me and you. Maybe not. But this time I want to ask you something to approach this whole idea of cheating maybe from a different perspective. And my question is, how would you feel if you were the side chick? Or I
I,
guess the side guy in like a relationship.
bro, I would love to be the side piece, man. I would
Okay.
enthusiastically be the side chick. Now, the first thing is I've been a side chick in many, not many, in some, non like some
Many.
consensual non-monogamous relationships, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like that was how I first got my introduction to, polyamory and like non-monogamous relationships, whatever. Was there was someone who, I'd like gone out with her and I was like, yeah, kind of like, what's the deal? We kind of talking, but I don't really know. And she was like, so basically, she was like, basically, yeah, I'm like in this polyamorous relationship with this guy, and like, so like whatever happens naturally can happen, but like, I'm like, but like I have a partner, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
cool, like, yeah, I was like, yeah, but, and at that point, I think I wasn't honestly that
So
interested in it. But
you were the side piece early on.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And at that point, I was, I took a break from that, like I wasn't super, but I opened up more to it later, and like, I have friends who would just be like, whoa, like, wait, so you met like her like boyfriend? And I was like, yeah, it was cool. He was nice. Like,
You met him. He knew about
yeah,
you too.
we played board games or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, right. You said they were polyamorous. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, in that situation, like being a side chick is a beautiful thing because, you're able to connect with someone at a certain level, but you don't have certain other pressures, right? And it's like me and this girl were cool, right? Like we got along, we liked each other, but you don't have there's like a certain bar that you kind of have to surpass to really make sense to, commit to someone in a relationship at a certain level.
Yeah.
But there's a million people who you can connect with at a slightly lower level. And when you get the option to just connect with them at that lower level and not have the pressure of wondering about that next thing, it's a beautiful thing.
Let me ask you something. Have you been a side piece when the other person in the relationship was in a monogamous relationship?
Well, it
We don't need to go into details, but like,
definitely one time, and I actually didn't know about it at that time.
okay.
At that point in time, I found out about the next year. It was someone who, it was like, so when I go to Japan on the Ekiden trip, right? It's like you go, you have all these like jet program hosts who take the team through because most of us don't speak Japanese. At that point, I didn't speak Japanese. I was like, mate, yamero, like that kind of thing.
You spoke Abraham Japanese.
Yeah, exactly. I was like Abraham Japanese, anime Japanese, like whatever you want to call it. Orewa,
お前
強い。
はもう死んでいる。
お前はもう死んでるよ。
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But so, he was one of our jet program hosts, and like we were kind of talking, and she was kind of, she kind of, we all went to karaoke. She came out with us after, and she came over. She whispered in my ear.
Oh,
We're doing karaoke with the whole group, and she comes over to me, leans right into my ear, and says, "I want to break you in half."
oh shit! Oh shit!
I
What?
swear to God. I swear to God. I swear to
Shit!
God. She leaves. She went right up and she said, "I want to break you in half." I think my
God
mouth,
damn!
my
God
mouth
damn!
was about like I uh, I I I didn't know what to say. Um, but all I know is,
God damn,
we were making out outside the
damn,
karaoke room. Next thing you know,
bro.
and she did just about break me in half. I'm not gonna
Can
lie
I
to you.
say I
I was,
love it. I love it when women are forward like that.
oh
Like
yes,
that's
oh,
actually a huge. That's a huge turn off.
take my pants off right now. You
That's a
know what I'm
huge
saying?
turn off.
Take my pants off right now, because most of the time you
And
got to be saying all this and that and spitting all this.
yeah,
She didn't just say I want you. No,
yeah. Break you in half. God damn, bro.
that's what I'm saying. So
Be careful
she,
though. If I heard that, I might. Part of me might wonder if I was about to get pegged or something like that.
she didn't peg me, but she just about darn near broke me in half. Let me tell you that.
Damn. Damn,
But
that's crazy, dog. That's
listen,
crazy.
because I'm kind of a teeth guy too. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm kind of a teeth guy too, and so I mean, not in certain situations, but it honestly, like, it was a great experience. Like, I was younger, I was like 24, like I hadn't, been with women, and honestly, like that was one of the first experiences where I felt like, like I can be kind of aggressive in a certain way, and like, if you don't like some teeth in this makeout, like it's just this just might not be for you, kind of thing. And that was kind of like one of the first times where, like, so I was really insecure and I was younger, and like some women would be like, oh, that's too much for me, oh, like that's, and that was the first time I was like, oh, this is just a thing that I like. I was like, this is a thing that I
Yeah.
like, and some women like it too, and that's beautiful, and I'm
So,
okay with that.
was this girl in a relationship then, or like this?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I almost forgot about that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time, but then the next year I was talking to her coworker. So she had left or something. We were just hanging out with him separately.
Okay.
And we had talked about, because he had been with karaoke with us and everything, so he knew what went down. And we were talking. She had told me she had like an ex-boyfriend, and he had done some like abusive stuff, so it was kind of like a sad story. But then he was like, no, no, she kind of still had a boyfriend at that point. She was stepping out at that point.
I understand, boyfriend. I mean, we learned that the Japanese people, their definition of cheating might not be the same as ours. So maybe she thought she was okay, in the
But
clear.
but she was jet program, man. She was Brazilian, and her boyfriend was back in Brazil.
Oh, never mind. My bad.
Yeah, man, that's what I'm saying. What
uh,
about you, man? Would you be a side chick? What's your
yeah.
situation?
So it would really depend. I think for one, I would have to if I found out after the fact, I feel like it would annoy me more than if I knew going into it. Just because
Mm,
I feel like I put effort into relationships, right?
mm.
If I'm just the side piece, then that's fine. But what am I wasting all of my time and effort into a relationship that's clearly not a meaningful relationship? You know what I mean?
Whoa, whoa, hold on. Who said it's not meaningful, man?
Well, meaningful in the sense that I'm putting effort into the relationship in the hopes that it'll like grow and bloom into something different,
Sure, sure,
right? And I
sure.
feel like as the side, like that's not your role as the side piece, right? You're
No.
there essentially just to have a fun time, right? And I'm down to have a fun time, but again, there's a lot of emotional investment that comes into these relations. So one, I think I would have more of an issue if I wasn't aware of it, just because I'd be like, man, I wish, like if I was bringing you flowers and I was bringing you cards, stuff like that, and I found out like I thought that I was genuinely in a relationship with you, and then I found out I was the side piece, I'd
Mm,
feel some kind of way about it. Because I'd be like, I spent this time with you, this money on you, now I feel embarrassed. But if you come to me like, you don't have to upfront be like, hey, by the way, I'm like, if it's very clear the nature of the relationship, like that, this is just a casual thing,
right.
then I would be on board with it. If I'd be on board with it if they were in like a polyamorous relationship. I would feel too
Oh
bad
man, what?
about.
Come on, man. That's a
No, no,
cop
no,
out, man.
no. I think that if I don't think I would. I think if I was a side piece and uh, I even if I didn't know the other guy, I would feel really bad about what I was doing to this other person because I I'm very good. One thing someone has told me is that I'm very good at being able to personally relate to people's like struggles and issues. Like a friend will tell me something and I'll find some way to connect it to like, my own lived experience and empathize with them. And I feel like if I was the side piece and I knew I wouldn't feel bad about what I've done to this point. I didn't know any better. But the moment I find out that there's someone else that she's in a relationship with, I would just be like, what how much is it gonna hurt this guy, once he finds out about what I'm doing with his girl, right? So I don't think I would be okay with it. If she's in a polyamorous relationship, then I don't care. Like, that's just
Right,
we're just two consenting adults at that.
yeah, it's a fair point. I wish I could say I was 100% on the same page. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I tell you, listen, because I have some friends who I know, like won't judge whatever. You know what I'm saying? I got some friends who
Yeah.
might judge. So, I don't know who's listening to this podcast at this point. And I'm
Look,
also not saying, I also want to be, I'm not out here saying that like my type is women in relationships, right? I want to be really clear
that's
that like,
crazy.
I
That's
want to be,
actually such a crazy statement.
I said, I don't want to say that, man. Did you hear
I
me?
I heard you, but you know when it's kind of like, when people are like, I don't want this.
Nah,
Have you
no,
ever
I
been
get
in a
what you're
room?
saying. I want to be really, really, really clear. I'm not just saying, I'm not trying to say that that's not my type, but I really go after them. It is not a preference. It is not
Yeah,
something that I actively pursue, women in relate.
yeah,
That is not something that I like
I
am,
get you.
am out here going for.
Yeah, but if it
Um,
happens to happen,
but yeah, it's like I remember there was this time. And it was a friend of mine. It was this girl I met in Ireland. She was Scottish, and we kind of got on pretty well. You know what I'm saying? Like we actually met, me and my buddy were out there, and we were kind of crushing it with the Scottish girls, but then we were all gonna go for a walk on the town or whatever, like midnight. But then we went to get our coats, and they like kind of got bored, and they were like, ah, not anymore. And we're like, man, we shouldn't have got our coats. What were we doing? We're dumb. Like we were in here. And so I saw her a couple years later at a different race, and we kind of jumped right back into being all flirty and everything, like a little
Mhm.
touchy. But she's making jokes. She's making jokes that you might not want your. She's making jokes you might not want your girlfriend to make. She's like, maybe I'd come back next year in an open relationship. We'll see. Like you might not be keen if now nothing ever happened between us, right? But like
Yeah,
at
yeah,
one
yeah.
point, she was coming to run a race in Boston, and she was like, "Yeah, you're around." And I was like, "Yeah, you could definitely come stay. We have a guest room. It's not like she's gonna be like staying in my room or anything, things like that." But I remember I said to my roommate at the time, I said, I if something happened, I was like, I don't think I would feel bad. I turned to Paul. I said, "Man,
Yeah.
I don't think I would feel bad."
I also feel like that's a little different of a situation, right? Like if I was, let's say I'm single and some girl, some friend, like if some girl is staying at my place, I feel like it would be, sometimes you think with your dick instead of thinking with your head, you know what I mean? Whereas it's like
Mm.
I could see myself being in a situation where I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't do this because I don't want to, you know, get get in the middle of a messy situation. But then I'm like, also, I could just do it. And it'll probably be fun. It'll probably be a good time.
Yeah,
So, we could just do it. So I think sometimes the temptation is just there too, and I think that's a
oh
little bit
yeah,
different
sure.
than maybe like actively. seeking
Bro,
that
but
out.
she wasn't she wasn't at my house when I said this. It's like 2 months out. I'm like, like the temptation was not the temptation was sitting right there.
Oh man.
Here's what it is, man. Because for me, I want to be, it's if I was like in the same city, if I was like in the same, if she's like in a happy relationship and I'm like in the same city and I'm like, yo, I want you to leave your man for me, that kind of thing, man.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the kind of thing I would really feel complicated about. Yeah, I want you to just leave your man and come be, yeah. And I'm gonna be blowing up her phone saying, yo, what happened? I thought we had something, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm in this position. I live a long plane ride away, we'll say. And if anything had happened, it's like I'm gonna go let her go back to her life, and we're still gonna be cool. Like she's as a person, I think she's great. Like we're still gonna be cool. Like I'll let her back on her life, and
I
I'm not
I
trying to
got
steal
I got
her man. But to me, I
I've got
think
one.
that's what makes me feel more okay with it is when I'm not really
Yeah.
trying to step in and like create that kind of contract. I'm like, you can go back to your life right now, and I'm not gonna be any kind of hindrance from that.
I've got one question.
Mm.
One last question for you. Have you ever been worried, or I guess, would you ever be worried about someone stepping up to you because of something like that? They find out that you know, because again, I know you live in Providence. I know you live in the Northeast. Maybe gun ownership isn't as high. I
Right,
feel like that's
right.
another. I'm like, it's another reason, just another reason why I wouldn't do it. Where I'm just like, bro, I live in St. Louis. Everyone,
Yeah,
half the
yeah,
people
yeah,
here
fair.
probably
Yeah, yeah,
are
yeah.
like hacking. So I don't know. Is that ever something that you've been concerned about or has crossed your mind?
Well, bro, you say this like I've really done this a million times.
I'm saying in the future, because
Right, right.
going forward.
This is not a this is not a situation that this is not a situation that I just like know about. You know what I'm saying? Like where I'm like, oh yeah. So I just remember the time that another time that I didn't know necessarily, I didn't know anything about it, but then we kissed, but it was kind of like a little break. So they were on a break, so it was a little complicated. I just remember like another moment, but they were actually on a break, and I didn't know about that, either. But the and she did it, not me. But it was compromising situation. I mean, I'm not gonna get in the whole situation. Um, we Man, it's not like I find myself, it's not like a premeditated situation that I continually find myself in because I'm chasing these moves. So it's not something that I have a lot of experience in thinking about, right? Uh, but I don't know, like know what they look like. Yeah, like know what they look like. You know what I'm
That
saying?
I mean, look, yeah, I just feel like that's there's a lot of people out there. That's just like a lot of undue stress in your life. But it is what it is. I can't say that I ever want to be in that kind of situation. Unfortunately, I haven't. Uh, but I think we can wrap this up real quick. Just talking about the Super Bowl. I want to talk about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, man. Who you rooting for, Abraham? Who you want?
I I think I'm rooting for the Chiefs. I think.
Oh boy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm not a Chiefs. I was rooting like hell for the Ravens. That's
Yeah.
who I actually wanted to win. Just because I love I love Lamar's story so much.
Mm.
And I got into an argument with a friend of mine. We're talking about Lamar versus Justin Herbert. We don't need to go into all of that. But
Oh
I thought it
man.
was the most ridiculous thing in the world that he was telling me he would probably start a franchise with Herbert over Lamar.
Mm.
Um,
That's like my friend who thought that random white girl was better looking than Taylor Rooks.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I was just like, bro, what has Justin Herbert accomplished? Regular season
Right.
or postseason?
Nothing.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. For Chiefs Niners, I think on one hand it would be cool for Brock Purdy. I think would actually I would be happy with the Niners winning because Brock Purdy getting his ring.
Right.
It's like that underdog story. Who doesn't love an underdog?
I love it.
But I also do think when Tom Brady left the Patriots, I remember thinking, we're never going to see this again, ever.
Right.
This 20-year run of dominance, and obviously they didn't win every year. They had like a 10-year drought where the Patriots didn't win anything, right?
Right.
But in the salary cap era, I was like, we're never going to see a sustained run of success like this ever again. And the Chiefs have me believing that they can actually pull off something like that.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
do think, as much as people hate the Patriots for a bunch of different reasons, it is always good to have that kind of Goliath, someone
Mm.
like that. It's always fun to be able to watch history and witness greatness. So I love watching Patrick Mahomes. I would be very into the kind of GOAT conversations that are going to start to come up if he wins his third ring by, like, his sixth or seventh year. I don't think anyone is going to be able to say he's the GOAT, but, like, GOAT trajectory, absolutely.
I mean, honestly, that's something that for me, like you talk about, I live in New England, right? I talked last week. Was it last week? I was talking about dogging out these Patriots fans, man.
Yeah.
And so I love the Brock Purdy story, especially as someone who ended up being an athlete at a really high level, who came from a place where you would not have expected that. A lot closer to being a seventh round pick who ended up being a very high level athlete as opposed to being someone who was a top pick, first round, whatever. So I really do empathize with the Brock Purdy story. He seems legit to me. I think he's better than Justin Fields, the quarterback of my team. I take him a million times over Justin Fields, like all freaking day. Um, but the the thing about Mahomes is, man, I want someone to catch Tom Brady. Like they had me in the year it was the year the Bucks won the Super Bowl. I was rooting so hard against Tom Brady every week. I was rooting against them in the wild card round. I was rooting against them in whatever the next round was. I was rooting for the Packers. I'm a Bears fan. I rooted for the Packers against them. I wanted the Packers to get to the Super Bowl so I could not have to deal with all these Patriots fans talking about Tom Brady. Tom Brady, 7 rings. They're like, can we just get away from it? He's not even on your team anymore.
That's crazy because the one Patriots fan that I'm close friends with, she was actively rooting against Tom winning in Tampa because she wanted his entire legacy to be in New England. So it's funny that all these people in New England are like, yeah, 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 let's root for Tommy.
Nah, bro, they were all like, we still got this guy because you wouldn't even believe the boner that all of New England has for Tom Brady. Like I have never seen anything. I've never seen anything like it, the amount they love this man.
Okay.
But so for me, rooting for Mahomes, like I'll be happy with whichever team wins, but I don't think Mahomes, because of how good he is and how like incredible all of his play is and how good he's been from the beginning. There's an argument like, yeah, Tom Brady's first couple Super Bowls were not really about him, right? It was about the defense, about Vinatieri. He led one drive, but he completed like 90. He had like 90 yards passing going into the fourth quarter of his first Super Bowl. I think that if we can get Mahomes to like 4, if we can get Mahomes to 5, I think the GOAT conversation is like really seriously opened in a way where Mahomes could legitimately become the GOAT. And that would be something that's really exciting for me.
I agree for sure. I mean, he's already you compare the start of the careers and it's not even close, right?
Not
In
even
terms
close.
of postseason success, they had a very similar amount of postseason success, but the team construction is completely different, right? Like
Right.
Mahomes has two MVP. I don't think Tom Brady won his first MVP till that '07 season, right?
Right.
It took Tom a while to develop into the quarterback that Mahomes essentially came into the league at. So, you go year by year, and I think Mahomes is it's
Bro,
almost
he
like in
can't,
the
he can't even
Olympics.
do Mahomes stuff, man. The freaking
Yeah.
pass that whatever his face dropped in the end zone where Mahomes threw it
Yeah,
on 4th and goal, like horizontal, and it hit a dude in the face. Like
yeah,
Brady
yeah.
cannot do. No one can do that, but this dude.
Yeah, yeah. But you know how in like the Olympics they're on like they'll say like in swimming and whatnot they'll be like the Olympic record pace or the world record, and you can
Right.
see
Right.
like sure this person hasn't set like the world record, but like they're on pace to. It's the if this were the Olympics, Pat Mahomes would be so far ahead of the pace that Tom Brady set at the
Right.
start of
Yeah.
his
Yeah. Completely. And I think the fact as well that he has the 12-year contract, like shoot, man, by the time that 12th year is on, he's going to be on a team friendly contract with 50 million a year. You know what I'm saying?
career.
Plus like inflation and like new
Yeah,
contracts and whatever are
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So if the dude
yeah.
stays healthy and is eventually when he's older on what is a team friendly contract again, I think the opportunities for him to be on some really incredible teams is going to be, when freaking all the other quarterbacks are making like 80, 90 million and he's just still one of the best dudes in the league, it's going to be really exciting to see, man.
You know what's one real quick one crazy stat that I
So
saw
I
today.
got one other crazy stat too. So after you, go ahead.
The stat I saw is that Brock Purdy made about $43,000 a game this year for the Niners,
Dang.
and that Mahomes made about $55,000 per throw this year. Jeez. Mahomes made more money per throw than Brock did per game, and I was like, dang,
Oh,
that's crazy.
that's hysterical, dude.
That's wild.
That's unbelievable. Dude, the last thing I was thinking about hating on Tom Brady, man. I saw a meld like of his like Tom Brady every year since, for the last 25 years or whatever. There's a
Uh,
point in that thing, man. You watch this dude's hairline go start thinning out in front and start going through all these random, like, oh, he's doing this comb over with it. And you just see it start coming back and you start seeing his jaw lines get thinner and finer. I'm like, yeah, man, I don't need to be that jealous of this dude.
that's when he met Giselle. He had that glow when he
I
met
was thinking that too, exactly.
Giselle.
It's like,
Oh
oh,
man.
Giselle, you got these people who can do what?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's it for today.
That's the show.
Yeah.
Well, you go ahead, keep on listening. Keep it. Thanks everyone for checking in. Like,
And
follow, subscribe. Oh, go
real
ahead.
quick, we have a Twitter now.
We have a Twitter.
We have a Twitter. The Twitter is at friend who read OP. I couldn't put the S after friends because there's a character limit on Twitter, but it's at friend who read OP. That's our Twitter handle.
Yeah, man. Go follow us. We'll hopefully be on, maybe even TikTok and not too long, but follow us
Yeah.
on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. Go ahead
Yeah.
and like us. Tell all your friends about us. We're heading towards our 200th. We're gonna by next week. We should have our 200th total listen. That's pretty exciting. And
Yeah.
love you and appreciate you, everyone. Thanks for being our
Thank you
friends.
guys. Take care.